Here's a busy update on our weather for North America. Let's get right into it here. We've got a cold front stretching across the northeast here and another cold front behind it. There's going to be a clipper system dropping down, as you can see, across southern Ontario and southern Quebec. This is going to set the stage for a New England blizzard. Look at these temperatures behind these two Arctic fronts. These temperatures are going to continue to pour southward into New England and the mid-Atlantic. It's warm across the southeast here, and most of Texas is warm. Here in the west, I don't want to feel like I've neglected you, but here in the west, not much is happening. We will have a system move in the next 36 hours here. Snow levels will lower to 2,500 feet, but we're looking at mainly some light rain moving into the Pacific Northwest. Temperatures are spreading into the 50s and 60s in the desert southwest. So let's get right into it with the pattern, the flow pattern. But before we do that, let's look at liquid equivalent precipitation, the bullseye right off of Cape Cod here. That Cape Cod's included in this. This is where the blizzard's going to wind up, and there could be a low further back in New York State and Connecticut that I'll tell you about as well. So other than that, the northwest, about 1/4 of an inch. Let's take a look at snowfall amounts with this blizzard. Here's the low pressure tracks. Let me get out of the way here. Low pressure tracks will come down across as the clipper moves southeast, but there'll also be, as this system moves southeast across New England and the mid-Atlantic, we'll have a secondary low develop, and this low will kind of hang back with an inverted trough, and that is why we're looking at possible snows even back further west. But the big story is going to be Cape Cod here, where we could see upwards of 12 to 18 inches with locally higher amounts, especially in eastern and southeastern New Hampshire and extreme down east Maine. But Cape Cod, we could be looking at a full-blown blizzard, 50-60 mile-per-hour gusts, even up the coast towards New Hampshire here. Things are going to really go downhill. You can see 6 to 12 inches striping through Boston here in the western suburbs. Worcester back here 4 to 8 inches, and even some 3 to 6 inch amounts now back into western Connecticut, western Massachusetts, heading on up to extreme southeastern Vermont, and extending on up into northern New Hampshire here. And the northern part of Maine, for the most part, will remain dry. We'll see up to 1 inch or 2 in Bangor, Maine, but most of that should remain south of, say, down east, or into down east Maine here. But heading back into New York City could get into the act too. 3 to possibly as 5 inches. 3 to 5 inches possibly in New York City. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. But we've been expanding our snowfall accumulations further west, even into eastern Pennsylvania. Parts of the southern Poconos here could get upwards of 3 to 5 inches, and some 1 to 2 inch amounts extending back in here to central Pennsylvania and upstate north central New York. Now, that is the New England blizzard. Let's take a look at lake effect snowfall accumulations east of Lake Erie and Ontario. These will be going on the next 24 to 48 hours. Let me get on the right side of the screen here so I can show you off of, basically off of Lake Ontario here. This is where we're going to be seeing accumulations on the order of 7 to 14 inches from Oswego down to Syracuse, and extending down towards just south of Rome. Extending on over into off Lake Erie, this is where things really get interesting. We've got Cleveland, Ohio, and just east of Cleveland, and the suburbs of Cleveland. That's where the highest accumulations are going to be. Basically, from Cleveland to Erie, we're going to be looking at 14 to 26 inches into a heavy band that develops off the lake the next 48 to 72 hours here. And there could be some thunder and lightning mixed in. So these counties along the lake shore, heed the warnings, because you won't want to be driving in this. So let's get right to the flow pattern. This is the flow pattern that's going to set up the lake effect as well as the blizzard. You can see the height lines here, 500 millibars, showing this trough across the northeast. So what do we have that's going to set up the New England blizzard? We have it deepen off of the Cape Cod coast down to 984 millibars on Tuesday afternoon. So let's move on to the next storm, and that will be Friday. Friday's storm, you can see ejects from the Texas Panhandle across the heartland of the country towards the central Appalachians, and this is where models start to diverge. We still have that wide swath of snow across the northern tier states, but then we get into a pattern where the low moves just near Delmarva, and then it regenerates a new low off the coast of North Carolina, and then pulls cold air down across the Appalachians and east of the Appalachians across the mid-Atlantic, changes this precipitation to snow, and moves a low up the coast and bombs it pretty quickly off the New Jersey, Long Island, and eventually the Cape Cod coastline, producing a wide swath of snow. Now, initially we will see a wide swath of snow, probably on the order of 3 to 6 inches across most of these northern states, especially north of the Pennsylvania-Maryland line on northward. We could see accumulations further southward too, but lighter accumulations. So we're looking at that as the big possibility. We're really confident about the initial shot of snow north of this initial low pressure, but the big question mark remains, is the flow pattern, you can see the jet stream here, is the flow pattern enough to give us that pattern that we need to regenerate this low and move it up the coastline? Now let's take a look at the NAO index. This is the index that we've been watching. It's going to stay mainly neutral, but the AO index, the Arctic Oscillation Index, very negative. So that is going to be key to setting up these major East Coast snowstorms, and I think that for the most part the AO index is going to win out here. So that's pretty much it. This will be the flow pattern for next weekend across the east, and you can see that trough. Let's take a look at temperatures very briefly here. The big story is going to be the cold air. Look at the polar vortex stays anchored just north of the Great Lakes here in eastern and central Canada, across Alberta, Manitoba, Quebec, Ontario, and northern parts of Nova Scotia. This continues, this pattern, this flow pattern. The systems will have a lot of cold air to make these winter storms happen, these temperature differences from the Gulf Coast all the way up to the northern Great Lakes. So we're going to be looking at this cold air outbreak continuing, and this cold air for Tuesday and Wednesday is going to make this blizzard a whole lot worse here in New England. Briefly, let's take a look at wind gusts we'll be looking at in New England. I would not be surprised to see some 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts from down East Maine down to eastern New Hampshire, and especially Cape Cod. This is where we really need, and lighter gusts, albeit moderate gusts, all the way back to western Connecticut. 50-mile-per-hour winds here in Hartford over to Providence, and extending up towards Worcester. So we're going to continue to watch this, and even 40, 30-mile-per-hour winds as far west as New York City. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this. I'm meteorologist Mark Molnar. Like us on Facebook at MeteoMark. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Here is a 4-day forecast for my hometown viewers from Binghamton to Elmira and the northern tier counties of Pennsylvania.